Have you been working hard to lose weight, watching the scale drop, seeing changes everywhere in your body, but that stubborn belly fat just won't budge? You've restricted calories, exercised consistently, done everything right according to conventional wisdom, yet your midsection remains your biggest frustration. You're not imagining things, and you're definitely not alone. The vast majority of women face this exact battle. And today, I'm going to explain the scientific reasons why belly fat is so stubborn and reveal the proven strategies that actually work to get rid of it for good. Before we dive into the science behind stubborn belly fat, I want to welcome everyone here today. If you're new to our channel, welcome to this community. We're building something special here, focused on evidence-based health information that truly works. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss content that could transform your approach to health and fitness. Your journey to better health starts right here, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. Drop your country or city in the comments below. I love connecting with viewers from around the world.
Here's something that might completely shift your understanding of belly fat. For years, mainstream advice has been straightforward. Eat less, move more, create a calorie deficit, and fat will disappear. But the reality is far more complex. Stubborn belly fat, the kind that persists even after you've lost weight everywhere else, is fundamentally a hormonal problem, not simply a matter of calories in versus calories out. This distinction is crucial and explains why some women succeed while most continue struggling. Two specific hormones play dominant roles in determining whether your belly fat stays or goes: cortisol and insulin. When these hormones are chronically elevated, they essentially create metabolic conditions that favor fat storage in your abdominal region, while simultaneously making it extremely difficult for your body to access that stored fat for energy. Understanding this hormonal connection is the first step toward actually solving the problem, rather than just fighting against your own physiology. Research published in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine examined premenopausal women and found something remarkable. Women with higher waist-to-hip ratios, meaning more abdominal fat, secreted significantly more cortisol during stressful situations compared to women who stored fat in their hips and thighs. After the first exposure to stress in the laboratory, women with greater abdominal fat felt more threatened by stressful tasks, performed more poorly, and secreted more cortisol. Even by the third exposure to the same stressors, these women still consistently secreted elevated cortisol levels. The lead investigator, Dr. Alyssa Epple, explained that greater exposure to life stress or psychological vulnerability to stress may explain their enhanced cortisol reactivity, which in turn may have led them to accumulate greater abdominal fat.
But what exactly does cortisol do? Cortisol is your primary stress hormone, released by your adrenal glands in response to physical or psychological stress. The Yale researchers explained that cortisol affects fat distribution by causing fat to be stored centrally around your internal organs. In animal studies, cortisol exposure directly increases visceral fat, the dangerous fat surrounding organs. People with conditions involving extreme cortisol exposure, such as Cushing's disease or severe recurrent depression, consistently develop excessive visceral fat. This isn't just cosmetic. Abdominal fat is related to worse health outcomes, including greater risk of heart disease and diabetes. Here's the critical mechanism. Cortisol directly inhibits a process called lipolysis, which is the breakdown of stored fat. For your body to use belly fat for energy, lipolysis must occur. Special enzymes called lipases facilitate this process. However, when cortisol levels remain elevated, whether from chronic stress, poor sleep quality, or both, it attaches to your abdominal fat cells and makes them resistant to breaking down, even when you're eating in a calorie deficit. Your body ends up accessing fat from other areas or even breaking down muscle tissue, while your belly fat remains frustratingly intact. The research makes it clear. You can be eating very little, exercising regularly, and doing everything conventionally recommended, but if your cortisol levels are chronically elevated, your belly fat will resist your weight loss efforts. This isn't about willpower or discipline. It's about hormonal biochemistry that operates whether you're aware of it or not. Dr. Eppel noted that everyone is exposed to stress, but some people may secrete more cortisol than others and may secrete cortisol each time they face the same stressor. The prediction was that reacting to stressors consistently by secreting cortisol would be related to greater visceral fat, and that's exactly what the study confirmed.
One of the primary drivers of elevated cortisol is inadequate sleep, and the research on this connection is both compelling and sobering. A groundbreaking study from Mayo Clinic published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that lack of sufficient sleep led to a 9% increase in total abdominal fat area and an 11% increase in visceral fat, the dangerous fat deposited deep inside the abdomen around internal organs. This occurred even in young, healthy, relatively lean participants. Dr. Virend Summers, the principal investigator, explained that normally fat is preferentially deposited subcutaneously under the skin. However, inadequate sleep appears to redirect fat to the more dangerous visceral compartment. Even more concerning, during the recovery period when participants caught up on sleep, their calorie intake decreased and they stopped gaining weight, but visceral fat continued to increase. This suggests that inadequate sleep is a previously unrecognized trigger for visceral fat deposition, and catch-up sleep, at least in the short term, doesn't reverse the accumulation. But the relationship between sleep and fat loss goes even deeper. In a landmark study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine, researchers at the University of Chicago examined 10 overweight adults who spent 14 days on a calorie-restricted diet. The participants were studied under two conditions, one period with 8.5 hours of sleep opportunity and another with only 5.5 hours. The results were dramatic and eye-opening. When participants slept 8.5 hours per night, more than half the weight they lost, 56%, came from fat. However, when they slept only 5.5 hours, just 25% of weight lost came from fat. That's a 55% reduction in fat loss from sleep restriction alone, despite both groups consuming identical calories. Dr. Playman Penev, the study director, stated that if your goal is to lose fat, skipping sleep is like poking sticks in your bicycle wheels. The sleep restriction didn't just preserve belly fat, it actively shifted the body's metabolism toward losing muscle mass while retaining fat. The mechanisms behind this are complex but understandable. Sleep restriction increases levels of ghrelin, a hormone that triggers hunger and reduces energy expenditure. It also shifts substrate utilization, meaning your body preferentially burns less fat when you're sleep deprived. The hormonal environment created by inadequate sleep simply doesn't support fat mobilization from adipose tissue, particularly from the abdominal region. So what's the solution? Prioritizing sleep becomes absolutely essential, not optional if you want to lose belly fat. The research consistently shows that adults need between 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night for optimal metabolic function. This isn't about feeling rested, though that's important. It's about creating the hormonal environment that permits your body to actually access and burn stored belly fat. Consider implementing these evidence-based sleep practices. Maintain a consistent sleep schedule, even on weekends. Create a dark, cool sleeping environment. Eliminate screens at least 1 hour before bed. And avoid caffeine after early afternoon. Track your sleep duration using a journal or app to ensure you're genuinely getting adequate hours, not just time in bed. Many women discover they've been chronically sleep deprived for years without realizing the metabolic damage it causes. Now let's address the second major hormone keeping your belly fat locked in place, insulin. Insulin is a storage hormone released by your pancreas in response to rising blood glucose levels. While insulin is essential for life, helping cells absorb glucose for energy, chronically elevated insulin levels create a significant obstacle for fat loss, particularly from the abdominal region. Here's the mechanism. Insulin directly signals your fat cells to store energy rather than release it. It suppresses the release of fatty acids from adipose tissue and actively promotes fat deposition. Insulin inhibits an enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase, which is responsible for breaking down stored triglycerides in fat cells.
When this enzyme is blocked, lipolysis cannot occur effectively, and your belly fat remains exactly where it is, regardless of your calorie deficit. Research shows that insulin acts as a powerful growth factor, making cells grow and divide. When insulin levels are chronically high, they push your body into fat storage mode continuously. Every time insulin surges, which happens when you consume foods that rapidly raise blood glucose, your fat cells receive the message to store, not burn. This is why managing insulin is just as critical as managing cortisol for belly fat loss. So what drives chronically elevated insulin? The primary culprit is a diet heavy in ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods are industrial formulations containing ingredients you wouldn't typically find in a home kitchen: hydrogenated oils, high-fructose corn syrup, artificial flavoring agents, emulsifiers, and numerous additives. These foods are specifically engineered to be hyper-palatable, meaning they're designed to make you want more. A groundbreaking randomized controlled trial by Dr. Kevin Hall at the National Institutes of Health provides the strongest evidence for how ultra-processed foods affect eating behavior and weight. Researchers admitted 20 healthy adults to the NIH Clinical Center for an entire month. In random order, participants spent 2 weeks eating an ultra-processed diet and 2 weeks eating an unprocessed diet. Critically, both diets were matched for calories, sugar, fiber, fat, sodium, and carbohydrates. Participants could eat as much or as little as they wanted.
The results were striking. On the ultra-processed diet, people consumed an average of 508 calories more per day compared to the unprocessed diet. This increased intake came primarily from carbohydrates and fats. Participants gained an average of 0.9 kilograms, about 2 pounds, on the ultra-processed diet and lost the same amount on the unprocessed diet, despite both diets providing identical starting calories and nutrients. Dr. Hall noted this was the first study to demonstrate causality, that ultra-processed foods directly cause people to overeat and gain weight. The participants ate faster on the ultra-processed diet and reported feeling less satisfied. What's remarkable is that it wasn't the sugar, fat, or salt content that caused the difference, since those were matched between diets. Something about the processing itself fundamentally changed how these foods affected appetite, satiety, and metabolism. Ultra-processed foods cause rapid blood glucose spikes, triggering massive insulin surges. These insulin spikes promote immediate fat storage, particularly in the abdominal region. Moreover, these foods are typically low in fiber and highly calorie-dense, meaning you can consume large amounts of energy quickly without feeling full. Meta-analyses examining multiple studies have consistently found that ultra-processed food consumption is associated with significantly increased risk of overweight, obesity, abdominal obesity, and metabolic syndrome. This explains why you cannot cheat the work of building a healthier relationship with food. You must shift toward whole, minimally processed foods: vegetables, fruits, whole grains, lean proteins, healthy fats, and legumes. These foods provide fiber that slows glucose absorption and prevents insulin spikes. They're naturally more satiating, so you eat less without feeling deprived. I'm not suggesting you can never enjoy treats. The key is proportion. If ultra-processed foods make up 50, 60, or 70% of your diet, your hormones will remain dysregulated. However, if you're eating primarily whole foods, around 80 to 90%, with occasional processed foods, you create the hormonal environment that allows belly fat loss. Here's what a successful strategy looks like in practice. First, sleep becomes your foundation. Aim for 7 to 9 hours per night consistently. Create a sleep-friendly environment: dark room, cool temperature, consistent bedtime routine. Eliminate screens at least an hour before bed. Track your actual sleep duration, because many people significantly overestimate how much they're sleeping. This single change normalizes cortisol levels and shifts your metabolism toward fat burning. Second, implement active stress management daily. The Yale researchers noted that a healthy lifestyle, including sleep, exercise, and relaxation, may reduce cortisol levels.
find what works for you. Meditation, yoga, walking in nature, deep breathing, time with loved ones, or enjoyable activities. Consistency matters more than duration. Even 10 to 15 minutes daily makes measurable differences. Third, transform your nutrition by gradually reducing ultra-processed foods and replacing them with whole, nutrient-dense alternatives. Focus on balanced meals with adequate protein, healthy fats, and fiber-rich carbohydrates that keep blood sugar and insulin stable. When you eat real food, your body naturally regulates appetite better. Dr. Hall's research demonstrated that people eating unprocessed foods spontaneously consumed fewer calories without trying, felt more satisfied, and lost weight. When you address these hormonal factors, fat loss becomes easier compared to fighting your own physiology. Yes, you still need to eat in a reasonable calorie range, but the quality of your diet and health of your hormones determine whether lost weight comes from belly fat or from muscle you want to preserve. The difference between women who struggle endlessly and those who succeed isn't willpower. It's understanding that belly fat is primarily a hormonal problem requiring a hormonal solution. They prioritize sleep. They manage stress actively. They eat primarily whole foods. Their bodies reward them with sustainable fat loss from the areas they care about most.
The Mayo Clinic researchers concluded that behavioral interventions, such as increased exercise and healthy food choices, need to be considered, especially for people who cannot avoid sleep disruption. More than 1/3 of U.S. adults routinely fail to get enough sleep due to work schedules, screen use, and modern lifestyle factors. This isn't just about appearance. Inadequate sleep appears to be a previously unrecognized trigger for visceral fat deposition with serious implications for obesity, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic disorders. So where do you start? Begin tonight with your sleep. Commit to 7 hours by setting a consistent bedtime. Tomorrow, identify one ultra-processed food and swap it for a whole food alternative. Maybe replace sweetened cereal with oatmeal and berries. Trade chips for nuts or vegetables. Replace soda with water. Add one daily stress management practice, even just 5 minutes of deep breathing. These aren't dramatic overnight transformations, but they create the hormonal environment where belly fat loss becomes inevitable. You're not broken. Your body isn't defective. You've simply been using strategies that don't address the root hormonal causes. Now you understand the science about cortisol, insulin, sleep, stress, and nutrition quality. You have knowledge that puts you ahead of most people still fighting this battle. The question is, will you implement what you've learned? If this video was helpful, kindly type yes in the comments. That motivates us to produce more content like this. Hit that like button, share this video with someone struggling with belly fat, and subscribe so you don't miss future content supporting your transformation. Your support helps us reach more people who need this information. Thank you for watching. I'm rooting for your success. You have everything you need to finally conquer stubborn belly fat. Take action and make it happen. See you in the next video.